Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why, and how of newspaper reading. Today we are going to analyze The Hindu, dated 11th of December 2019, New Delhi edition. Displayed on the screen is a list of articles that we are going to analyze today. Timestamping for the same has been provided in the description of the video. Let's begin. We have taken this news from page number 9, and this topic is very important from the perspective of economy. It touches various issues like IPR or intellectual property right. It talks about rights of farmers, and it also talks about big players like Pepsi, which is suing Indian farmers. Now, before moving further, let's first understand the context as this news has some history. First, we need to understand that PepsiCo, which is a big multinational giant and owns multiple brands, has filed a case against potato farmers in Gujarat. Now, the point of filing this case was that Pepsi claims that they have developed a variety of potato by the name of FC5, and they use this potato variety in their chips, which is Lay's. Now, it has been found that some of the farmers in Gujarat were producing FC5, but they were selling it to their local competitors. Pepsi considered this as an infringement of IPR or intellectual property right, as Pepsi is the one which developed the FC5 variety for their specific purpose, that is, to use in the chips. And in this case, we have already mentioned the chips here was Lay's. Now, keeping this thing in mind, the company filed for a compensation under the PPV-FRA Act of 2001. Now, by PPVFR, we mean Protection of Plant Varieties and Farmers' Right, and this was passed in 2001. Now, company filed for a compensation of rupees 1 crore, and this was basically done to discourage the farmers from using the variety of FC5 and selling it to their local competition. Now, farmers claimed that they have a right to grow under the PPVFR Act of 2001. Now, this case caused huge uproar in India, where a big multinational company tried to sue local farmers. This gathered a lot of coverage in the news and media as well, and later on, Pepsi withdrew the compensation part of the case. However, first time the company tried to sue the farmers for the violation of their IPRs. And for this purpose, this topic is touching the issue of IPR. Now, we need to understand that under this Act of 2001, that is Protection of Plant Varieties and Farmers' Right Act of 2001, an authority was also created by the name of Protection of Plant Varieties and Farmers' Right Authority, that is PPV and FRA. Now, PPV FRA, which is the authority, has presented clarifications about the Act on the website. In those clarification, there is an FAQ as well, which means frequently asked questions. Now, the company is pressing, that is PepsiCo, is pressing charges against the farmers on the basis of the FAQ in the PPV and FRA. Now, according to this FAQ, right to sow and re-sow is given to small and marginal farmers. Company claims that the potato farmers that we have talked about in Gujarat are not small, they are big farmers, and hence the company is pressing charges against these farmers. Now, in the light of this development, the heading reads, amid complaints, farmer body to revise guidelines. So, what kind of guidelines we are talking about? The guidelines where right to sow and re-sow was given to small and marginal farmers only and not to others. And this is what the context of this article is. However, in the same context, we need to understand more about PPVFR Act of 2001. Now let us try to understand the purpose or the objective of PPVFR Act of 2001. Now this act was basically designed to protect Indian farmers and researchers. And for this particular purpose, this act was enacted to grant intellectual property rights to plant breeders, researchers, and farmers who have developed a new or an extant plant variety. Now, the objective, as already mentioned, was to balance the interest of breeders with the farmers. Now, it is noteworthy that under the TRIPS, that is, trade related intellectual property rights, the farmers' interests are not protected enough. And this is one of the reasons why India has not resorted to TRIPS but has gone for PPVFR. Now we need to understand the second important aspect is what kind of varieties are registered under the Act. Now the Act clearly defines that a new variety, if it conforms to the criteria of novelty, distinctiveness, uniformity, and stability, then it can be registered under the Act. At the same time, it also focuses on an extant variety. And when we talk about extant variety, it means it conforms to the criteria of distinctiveness, uniformity, and stability. Now, it is also important here to understand that extant variety means a variety which is notified under Section 5 of the Seeds Act of 1966, or a farmer's variety, or a variety about which there is common knowledge, or any other variety which is in public domain. So whatever is there in terms of traditional or in public domain can be notified as extant variety. Now when we talk about this right, we need to focus on the three stakeholders, and the stakeholders are breeders, researchers, and farmers. Now, when we talk about breeders, we need to focus on the rights of breeders. Now, breeders are the people who basically invest money to develop new varieties. Now, when we talk about breeders, breeders have exclusive right to produce, sell, market, distribute, import, or export the protected varieties. When we talk about researchers, since we are talking about the patent or intellectual property right, researchers have a right to use any registered variety for conducting experiment and research. Through this process, innovation is basically encouraged. Last but not the least, farmers are very important, and farmers have a right to save, sow, re-sow, exchange, share, or sell his farm produce, including the seeds of a variety protected under the PPV and FR Act of 2001 in the same manner as he was entitled before coming into force of this act. This gives a lot of freedom to farmers, and this has actually protected the interest of farmers against big company. You might have heard about Terminator gene technology. So these kind of measures were done to ensure that big companies do not exploit farmers, and they should have an equal say vis-a-vis breeders or researchers in this case. And that is what the purpose of PPVFR is. Now we have understood what PPVFR is. So let's now go back to the original story and try to understand how the things have developed so far. Now let us use this diagram to understand the full context of the article. Now we are aware that trade-related intellectual property rights, or the TRIPS, came into operation in the year 1995. Now when TRIPS came into force, the main objective of TRIPS was to ensure the protection of patents, copyrights, and trademarks. Now there was a growing demand that the provision of TRIPS should be implemented in all fields, and which included agriculture as well. Now, big companies have invested a lot of money and resources, and they wanted to actually utilize the technology that they have developed in order to harness maximum benefit. At the same time, the poor farmers in developing countries like India need to protect their seed varieties. And this is where there was a need to think beyond TRIPS. Now, we need to focus on this, that through TRIPS, there was a protection of new seed varieties which was basically being targeted. And once this was done, it would have compromised the interest of farmers. Moreover, it would have actually benefited big companies. And this is where we need to balance the rights of two big stakeholders. First, big companies, and second, farmers. We need to give protection of new seed varieties. At the same time, we need to protect the interest of farmers as well. So there were two mechanisms available. Either we could have gone with TRIPS, or we could have gone for sui generis method. So when we talk about sui generis method, India basically resorted to going for sui generis and not going for the TRIPS provisions as passed in the 1995. And in consideration of sui generis, the Government of India passed the PPV-FR Act of 2001, which we have discussed recently. Now, it is important for you to understand that TRIPS agreement provides for Union for Protection of Plant Varieties or UPOVs, which may be used as a basis for sui generis system. So this is one of the provisions under TRIPS where UPOV could be utilized for sui generis. So India had a choice whether to enact domestic law or issue patent for the protection of plant varieties. At the same time, India also had the option of becoming the member of UPOV and incorporate the provision of UPOV in its domestic law. In this case, India decided not to become a member of UPOV. At the same time, it enacted domestic law in the form of PPV FR Act of 2001. This was specifically done in order to protect the interest of farmers, since the UPOV denies farmers the freedom to reuse, farm saved seeds, and to exchange them with their neighbors. So, this is where the provisions were not in favor of farmers, especially in India, and hence the Government of India has decided to withdraw from the UPOV. And this is the reason why PPVFR Act was passed in this format. So, in a nutshell, PPVFR Act was passed, and through this, the rights of farmers as well as breeders were protected. Now, let's move to the controversy between the PepsiCo and the farmers. Now, we have understood the context of TRIPS, protection of new seed varieties, sui generis, TRIPS and their problems. We have also learned about UPOV and how it led to the passing of PPVFR Act. Now let us go back to the problem at hand in terms of PepsiCo. Now we know that PepsiCo has developed a variety of potato by the name of FC5. Now this potato variety was to be used by Pepsi for their chips, which is Lay's. So PepsiCo entered into a collaborative farming program with 12,000 farmers, where the company sells seed to farmers and has an exclusive contract to buy back produce. So suppose this is Pepsi, so they have given the seed to the farmers, and there is a buyback that is working, that all the potato that will be grown will be sold back to Pepsi only, and there will be no one else involved in this case. Now the company found that some farmers in Gujarat who were not part of its collaborative farming program. So here it is important to understand that farmers who are sued were not part of the collaborative farming program, and they were also growing and selling potatoes of this variety. On account of this, company decided to file a case against these farmers for the infringement of its right, and accordingly sought a compensation of rupees 1 crore at the very beginning. The company believes that its collaborative farming program and registered variety of rights is under threat, and there is a chance of misuse of FC5, and the chance of misuse was here related to selling of FC5 crop to the local competitor. Now the company argued that some of the big farmers who are not even the part of the collaborative program are producing FC5 variety and selling it to the local competitor, and in this way is negatively impacting its produce, and hence they should be controlled. At the same time, farmers quoted that they have a right to save, use, sow, resow, and exchange, share or sell their farm produce, including seed varieties protected under this act. And since they have a right to exchange with their neighbors, and hence there cannot be any case which can be forced on them. And this is what the farmers have been claiming. Another very important aspect of this case is that FC5 is registered as an extant variety. As already mentioned, whenever something is registered under extant variety, it comes under the variety of common knowledge. This, in other words, implies that the said variety of potato was already available in the country before it was registered, and there was common knowledge about this. So it actually means that the variety that Pepsi is claiming would surely have been produced in the country before it was even registered. And hence, farmers have a strong claim to produce and to sell it to anyone. So, this is the entire story of the case, but we need to understand the way forward as well. PepsiCo has now decided to withdraw the cases and was based upon the assurance from the government from a long term amicable settlement. But what the settlement would be is yet to be known. The case has already become an example of how MNC or the multinational corporations exploit the law to realize their objective. So, this is something which is actually going against big companies in India, and this is where the Act has to take corrective measures. Further, there is a need to ensure that future certificates of registration of plant varieties issued to companies should explicitly mention that rights of farmers should be given precedence over the rights of breeders. And this is where the news story is related, which says that the farm body is willing to make some of the changes in the act. So we hope that now this story is clear to you. We have taken this article from page number 14, and it talks about US Saudi Arabia at the bottom of the climate class. Now, it also talks about for the first time, India ranks among top 10 in terms of performance CCPI. Now, this topic is important from the perspective of environment and ecology and more from the perspective of the prelims examination. Now, UPSC has asked many questions in the past years which deal with this topic. Now, especially in 2016, UPSC has asked three questions which dealt with various kinds of indexes and reports. In consideration of this trend, we'll be focusing on few simple aspects of this report. First and foremost, who publishes the report, parameters used, India's rank, and its relation with other reports or agreements. In this context, let's try to understand each of these points that we have mentioned one by one. When we talk about the relation with other reports or agreements, this report is being published annually since 2005. At the same time, since the Paris Agreement of 2015, the importance of this report has increased as now the world has entered a very important phase of 2020s. Now, how well we perform in terms of limiting our greenhouse gases will actually show how well we are going to achieve our target of less than 2 degrees Celsius of heating by 2100. Now, in this context, Climate Change Performance Index has been released and India is ranked for the first time in under 10, and this time India's rank is 9th. At the same time, it is important to understand that the US, which has announced that it wants to withdraw from Paris Agreement, is at the last rank and it is followed by Saudi Arabia. And it basically shows that these two countries have done least to stop climate change from taking place. Now, it also mentions several countries have reported fall in the emission in previous years. Now, when we talk about the previous years, this kind of a change is possible because coal is now being used less and many countries have moved towards alternate fuels or renewable energy, and hence we have seen that there is fall in emissions in comparison to the previous years. At the same time, the Climate Change Performance Index report clearly states that none of the countries have done enough to stop climate change from taking place or even the realization of goals. And hence, in this context, it is important that none of the countries are ranked from 1, 2, and 3. The ranking starts from 4th, which is occupied by Sweden. So, this is a very important piece of information that you should keep in mind. And a question can be designed in the examination which can test you about this understanding. Now, let's focus on what is Climate Change Performance Index. Now, first we understand that German Watch, the New Climate Institute, and the Climate Action Network publish this index annually. As already mentioned, this index is being published annually since 2005. The objective of this report is to act as an independent monitoring tool for countries' climate protection performance. And when we talk about an independent monitoring tool, it basically focuses on multiple aspects to judge how well the countries are performed in terms of controlling emissions. At the same time, it tries to actually enhance transparency in the international climate politics and enables the compatibility of climate protection efforts and progress made by individual countries. So, this is important more from the perspective of realization of goals, as at the same time, as mentioned earlier, it is more of an independent monitoring tool of countries. Now, when we talk about the ranking system is based on aggregate performance within the four categories. And when we talk about these four categories, there are more variables in these four categories. Actually, there are 14 indicators. At the same time, it is important to understand that there are different weights allocated to different categories. Now, the first category is greenhouse gas emission. The overall weight of this category is 40%. Second is renewable energy. The overall weight is 20%. Energy use is 20% and climate policy is 20%. So these weights are important for you from the perspective of the examination. Please try to understand that there's a difference between categories and indicators. Now 14 indicators are part of these four broad categories. So this is an important piece of information that should keep in mind. Now the important aspect of this CCPI result of 2020 that it basically evaluates 57 countries and the European Union. At the same time, it clearly mentions that no country performs well enough in all index categories to achieve overall very high rating in the index. And therefore, once again, the first three ranks remain empty. So, this is an important piece of information. A question can be asked in which they can say that Sweden is at rank number 1. This statement would be incorrect. So, in this year's index, Sweden leads the ranking, but it is not rank 1, it is rank 4 and is followed by Denmark and Morocco. At the same time, the last rank holder is United States, which is 61, followed by Saudi Arabia. So this is rated as low or very low across all categories. So in this context, these topics are important. So we have covered first, published by, parameters, India's position, and last is relationship, other reports or agreements. When we cover important international index or reports, we try to focus on all these four parameters. And this is how we prepare ourselves for the prelims examination. We have taken this article from page number 4 and it talks about capital takes step to help India better its ease of doing business. Now in this context, this article is related more to the Delhi government and is focusing on one particular thing, that is the construction permit indicator. Now this topic is important from the perspective of economy. At the same time, this topic is more important from the perspective of the prelims examination. So in this context, let's try to understand what author has to say about this article. Now before moving further, it is important for us to understand that ease of doing business is published by World Bank, and India in the recent past has improved its rank considerably. Now as far as this article is concerned, it focuses on Delhi government's undertaking to a number of measures to improve India's rank in the ease of doing business. At the same time, it focuses on one particular target, that is construction permit indicator. Now in the field of this construction permit indicator, India's rank has improved considerably. It was 52 in 2018 and it moved to 27 in 2019. At the same time, government has set the target to be in top 10 countries in the construction permit indicators. So this is something which the government has laid for itself in terms of the target in the time to come. Now let us understand more about ease of doing business and India's performance. If we talk about India's performance, India's rank has improved 14 places in the latest World Bank's Doing of Business Index in 2020. So in 2020, our rank is 63. And if we cover our rank from 2019, it was 77. So there is an improvement of 14 ranks that we have achieved in last 1 year. At the same time, it is noteworthy that India is one of the most improved 10 economies for the third consecutive year. It shows that India is far more conducive in terms of doing business. Now let's understand more about the Doing Business Index. Now, when you talk about Doing Business Index, the countries are ranked on the ease of doing business from 1 to 190. Now, when we say 1 to 190, it means that there are 190 countries which participate in this ranking system. At the same time, it covers 12 areas of business regulation. At the same time, we need to understand that there are 10 regulations which are included in the ease of doing business score, and hence they are part of the ranking. At the same time, there are additional two regulations which are not used for the calculation of score. Now, in the PDF of this video, all 12 business regulations are mentioned. Please take a note and go through them. 10 of these are starting a business, dealing with construction permits, getting electricity, registering property, getting credit, protecting minority investors, paying taxes, trading across borders, enforcing contracts, and resolving insolvency. So these are included in ease of doing business score and ease of doing business ranking. At the same time, two other parameters which are not used for scoring purpose are regulation on employing workers and contracting with the government. So this is again a very important aspect that you should note for the purpose of prelims examination. Now let's focus on India's performance. As already mentioned, India's rank in 2020 is 63. At the same time, in 2014, this rank was 142. It means from 2014 to the current level, India has improved considerably in this period. Now, there are four areas which actually have helped India in improving its rank. And these areas are: first, starting a business; second, dealing with construction permits; third, trading across borders; and fourth, resolving insolvency. So because of these factors, the rank of India has improved in last 5 to 6 years. At the same time, Government of India has now set a target that it will enter the top 50 in terms of ease of doing business index. Now, as already mentioned, the government is planning to be in top 50 in terms of ease of doing business, and hence the government has prepared and hence government has identified various steps taken, and hence the government has identified steps that are need to be taken. Now, in this context, the first is Business Reform Action Plan 2019 for states. Now, in this context, an 80-point action plan has been prepared by DPIIT and is shared with all states and union territories for the implementation of reforms. At the same time, this process is also encouraged at the district level as well. And similarly, a comprehensive 218 points district reform plan has been prepared and shared with the state governments with a request to implement the same in the district. Now, as already mentioned, that there were some parameters which actually helped government to improve its ranking. Now, the government has also taken initiatives to improve its performance in these four parameters. At the same time, the fifth parameter, that is paying taxes, has also been added. Now, for this purpose, let's focus on them one by one. First is starting a business. Now, for starting a business, an integrated form of simplified performa for incorporating company electronically by merging 5 different application forms. Now, since the 5 different forms are merged into one, which will simplify the process of starting a business in India. Now, the second important aspect, which is also the point of discussion for this article, is dealing with construction permit. Now, there will be a one single window system that has been introduced in Delhi and Mumbai. Now, Unified Building Bylaws 2016 has been introduced in Delhi, and this is one of the many steps that Delhi government has taken in terms of improving our ranking in dealing with construction permit. Next is enforcing contract. Now, National Judicial Data Grid, that is NJDG, and Commercial Court Act of 2015 have been set up for the speedier disposal of commercial dispute and reduce pendency. So this is something which is also going to help in improving India's rank in ease of doing business. Next is resolving insolvency. This is a very important aspect for any business or profession. Now, professional institutes have been established for effective handling of restructuring and insolvency proceedings. Last but not the least, which is a new addition, and this is paying taxes. Now, we know that India has incorporated huge tax reforms, which includes cut in corporate tax and introduction of GST. At the same time, there's an electronic system for payment for social security contributions. So, all these steps will actually help the government to do better in terms of its ranking in ease of doing business. We have taken this news item from page number 20, and actually, it is an advertisement by the Odisha government where they have claimed their achievement of winning World Habitat Award of 2019. In this context, the advertisement also highlights the global recognition for Jaga Mission. Now, in this context, it is important for you to understand what is Jaga Mission. At the same time, you need to know what is World Habitat Awards. Now, this topic is important more from the perspective of the prelims examination. At the same time, this is important from the perspective of government schemes as well. Jaga is one such successful scheme which is implemented by the Odisha government, and it has proved that life of slum dwellers can be changed drastically through the government initiative. In this case, we are talking about the Jaga mission. So let's try to understand more about this award and how this has changed the life of the people. Now, as already mentioned, the Odisha government has won the World Habitat Award, a global recognition for its ambitious initiative called Jaga Mission. Now, it is noteworthy here that under the Jaga Mission, 52,682 urban poor families who are living in the slum have been granted land rights certificate. As already mentioned, this award is given by the World Habitat. Now, as far as the World Habitat is concerned, it is a UK based organization and it gives this award in partnership with the UN Habitat. The award is given every year, that is annually, and this award is given in recognition of innovative, outstanding, and revolutionary ideas, projects, and programs from across the world. Now, let us take our focus back to Jaga Mission. Now, Jaga Mission is now considered as world largest slum titling project. Now, it is important to understand what is land titling. Now, as far as land titling is considered, it is more of a land reform. Now, in this land reform, private individuals are given formal property rights for the land that they have been occupying informally. So, through Jaga Mission, government has addressed the fears of slum dwellers in terms of eviction from their land. At the same time, the government has also addressed another important aspect of giving right type of civic amenities to the people who are residing in these slum areas. Now, as far as this project is considered, this mission is executed in collaboration with Tata Trust and Norman Foster Foundation. Now, as shared on the Jaga Mission website, around 1,725 slums have been surveyed under the project. Now, it is important to highlight that state of art technology has been used for the purpose of survey. For this purpose, drones and GIS technology has been used for the purpose of survey. Now, one of the greatest achievement of this Jaga mission is the adoption of state of art technology. At the same time, it has also ensured extensive community partnership, and this has resulted into dispute and litigation free implementation in a time bound manner. Now, this project was launched on 7th of May 2018, and so far it has already benefited around 52,000 families. This shows that the project has been a great success. Now, Jaga Mission has also been recognized at many places. The project was awarded the India Geospatial Excellence Award for technological innovation in transforming lives of urban poor. And hence, in this context, this topic is important from the perspective of prelims examination. Now, in the context of the news, let's try to understand more about the UN Habitat. Now, the United Nations Human Settlement Program. Now, the Human Settlement Program is called as Habitat and was established way back in 1978. Its headquarters is in Nairobi, Kenya. Now, it is mandated by the UN General Assembly to promote socially and environmentally sustainable towns and cities. The objective of UN Habitat is to provide shelter to all. Now, the goal of this organization is to improve the life of 100 million slum dwellers by the year 2020. Now, when we talk about Jaga mission, these play a very important or pivotal role in the realization of goals for UN Habitat as well. In this sense, both UN Habitat and Jaga mission are important from the perspective of prelims examination, and you should focus on this organization as well as this mission from the perspective of the prelims examination. On the first page of today's newspaper, there is a news which talks about Supreme Court flags delay in the appointment of judges. Now, this topic has been covered in detail by Baswa sir while analyzing the economic survey of 2018-19 on the date of 30th of July 2019. In this particular topic, Baswa sir has discussed the problems with High Court, Supreme Court, and other courts like district and subordinate courts. Now, this topic is done much in detail, and one should refer to this article to develop a complete picture on the topic which is given in the today's newspaper. In this context, we highly advise you to go through the analysis which has already been done by Baswa sir. Now, on page number 12, there is an article which talks about RBI didn't stop SBI's role in poll bonds. Now, this topic is related to electoral bonds, which was covered on 19th/11/2019. You may refer to the article in which RBI had warned of the pitfall of electoral bonds. In this context, this topic was discussed in detail. It is highly advisable from our side that you should go and refer to this article from this date, that is 19th of November 2019. Based on today's discussion, let's take up practice questions. Practice question number 1. India's ranking in Ease of Doing Business Index is sometimes seen in the news. Which of the following has declared that ranking? Now, this question was asked in UPSC examination prelims in 2016. And as discussed in the analysis, the correct answer is World Bank, that is option C. Question number 2, which again talks about ease of doing business. And it talks about first, ease of doing business takes into account 10 parameters for calculating business index. Now, in the analysis, we have discussed that there are 10 plus 2 parameters. At the same time, it was clarified that these 10 parameters are used for the scoring purpose and other 2 are not used for scoring. And hence, statement 1 is correct. Second is India's rank has consistently improved since 2014. This is also correct. And hence the correct answer is option C, both 1 and 2. Question number 3, which of the following publishes the Climate Change Performance Index? As discussed in the analysis, all three, German Watch, the New Climate Institute, and the Climate Action Network are responsible for the publication of Climate Change Performance Index. Hence the correct answer is option D. With this, we have come to the end of today's session. Let's move to the question of the day.